Let's talk about something that so many people underestimate when it comes to intimacy, communication. And no, I don't just mean talking about what time dinner is or who's taking the dog out. I mean real, honest, vulnerable conversations about what you like, what you don't like, what you've always wanted to try but maybe felt a little shy bringing up. The truth is, without communication, there's no real connection. And without connection, intimacy becomes routine, transactional, or worse, disconnected entirely. What I've seen over and over again is couples who deeply care about each other, but still feel unfulfilled in the bedroom. And when you peel back the layers, it's almost always the same thing. They're not talking. Or one partner is dropping hints and the other is missing them completely. Especially when it comes to women expressing their desires, there's often hesitation. It can feel uncomfortable. Some fear judgment, rejection, or simply don't feel safe enough to be fully open. And many men, even with the best of intentions, just don't realize how much is being left unsaid. This is where curiosity becomes so important. Asking your partner what feels good, what they wish happened more often, or what fantasies they've never voiced. These are not risky questions. These are necessary ones. And if the relationship is healthy, the answers should never be met with defensiveness or ego. They should be met with interest, patience, and a willingness to understand. Because ultimately, communication isn't just about speaking, it's about listening to learn, not to respond. There's also this myth that if you have chemistry, things should just click without having to talk about it. But that's not how long-term connection works. Good intimacy doesn't just happen, it's built, it's refined, and it evolves over time. That means what worked a year ago might not be what your partner needs today. The only way to know that, you guessed it, communication. And here's the powerful part. When someone feels heard, not just in life, but in the most vulnerable, intimate spaces, it creates a level of trust that changes everything. It makes experimentation feel safer. It makes giving feedback feel less like criticism and more like a gift. It allows partners to step into roles they didn't even know they were capable of, because the fear of doing something wrong is replaced by the confidence of doing something together. So if you're wondering why certain positions never come up or why your partner seems hesitant to initiate, don't guess. Ask. Create the kind of environment where both of you feel empowered to say what you want. That's not just how better intimacy starts, that's how it lasts. Because the bedroom should be the one place where both people feel completely seen. Let's get honest about something that's rarely said out loud. Women's desires are often left unexplored, not because they're not there, but because they're buried under layers of assumption. Assumptions about what women should want, what's normal, or worse, what's too much. And that silence, it's not a lack of interest, it's often a fear of not being understood. From a very early age, many women are socialized to prioritize emotional connection, to be less direct about physical needs, or to feel like asking for certain things might make them seem too forward or too much. And while a lot has changed in how we talk about sexuality, the truth is, this conditioning still lingers in ways that matter deeply in relationships, especially in the bedroom. A lot of women have specific positions or experiences they wish were happening, but they hold back, hoping their partner will just sense it, or afraid that saying something will hurt their partner's ego. On the other side, a lot of men believe that what they're doing is enough, and many times it is, but enough isn't the same as deeply fulfilling. And when men assume their partner isn't asking for anything new because she's satisfied, it creates a loop of missed opportunity. Not because either person is doing something wrong, but because no one's been taught how to have these conversations, or even that they should be happening. The unfortunate result is a quiet kind of frustration, where women go along with routines that don't excite them, and men feel confused when emotional or sexual intimacy seems to fade over time. But here's the truth. Just because a woman isn't saying anything doesn't mean she doesn't want more. In fact, some of the most desired positions, the ones women wish their partners would try, are often the ones they feel least comfortable bringing up. And the reasons vary, fear of judgment, past experiences, cultural messaging, or simply the belief that it's too late to change the dynamic. But it's not too late. In fact, exploring those silent desires can be one of the most powerful things you can do as a couple. It starts with creating space to ask, to be curious, and most importantly, to listen without reacting. When a woman feels truly safe and free to express what she wants, without pressure or shame, everything changes. Her body responds differently, her confidence grows, and the connection between both partners deepens in ways that go far beyond physical pleasure. So if you've never asked her what she's been craving, not just in general but specifically, now's the time. Because there are positions she's quietly begging for, not with words, but with body language, hesitation, or even withdrawal. And recognizing that, that's the first step in giving her the freedom to finally speak her desire out loud. Let's talk about the elephant in the room. The reason so many men never try the very positions women are secretly craving. And no, it's not because they're unwilling or lazy. It's usually much deeper than that. It often comes down to insecurity, fear of doing it wrong, or simply a lack of awareness. No one handed out a guidebook on how to please your partner in ways that go beyond the base. Most of what people learn about intimacy is through experience, media, or guesswork. And unfortunately, that rarely includes how to tune into a woman's evolving needs, especially when it comes to physical connection. There's a misconception that men are naturally supposed to know what to do in the bedroom, but that pressure can actually backfire. When men are afraid to get it wrong, they tend to stick to what they know works, what's familiar, what feels safe. And while consistency has its place, routine without curiosity quickly turns into boredom. Not just for her, but for him too, even if he doesn't realize it. Avoiding certain positions because they seem too complicated, too vulnerable, or maybe even too submissive, becomes a kind of quiet avoidance that limits the full potential of intimacy. And here's the thing, a lot of the positions women beg for aren't wild or extreme. They're often about feeling seen, feeling taken care of, or feeling fully involved. But some of those positions require a level of focus, stamina, or emotional presence that some men fear they can't maintain. Instead of expressing that fear or asking for guidance, they retreat to what's familiar. Again, not out of bad intention, but out of silence. And that silence creates space for disappointment, even if no one is saying it out loud. Some positions also challenge traditional ideas about masculinity, where being in control is expected, and anything that shifts that balance feels uncomfortable. But the truth is, being open to new dynamics doesn't make someone less masculine. If anything, it shows confidence and security, the kind of traits that build trust and turn intimacy into something far more satisfying for both partners. It's important to understand that trying new things isn't a performance, it's a practice. It doesn't have to be perfect. In fact, the willingness to try, to listen, to laugh if it's awkward, and to adjust, that's what creates memorable, connected experiences. The positions women want are not about testing a man's skill. They're about feeling like their needs matter, like their pleasure is being prioritized just as much. So if there's hesitation, don't ignore it, explore it. Ask yourself what you're avoiding and why. Because the moment you stop avoiding the unknown is the moment you start unlocking a whole new level of connection and pleasure that she's probably been waiting for. Because pleasure, in its truest form, is not a solo event happening in a shared space, it's a shared experience, built together. And when one person consistently gets the majority of the attention, while the other learns to settle for less, or stay quiet, that imbalance starts to erode the connection in ways that often go unnoticed, until it's too late. A lot of couples don't even realize this imbalance is happening. Sometimes it's because no one is talking about what's missing. Other times it's because the dynamic has become so routine, it feels normal. But let's be clear, if one person is regularly left feeling unfulfilled, unseen, or emotionally checked out after intimacy, it's not mutual, and it's not healthy. True pleasure is about reciprocity. It's about making sure both people are involved, excited, and deeply present in the moment. The problem is, many men are taught, either directly or subtly, that their pleasure is the indicator of a successful encounter, that once they've reached that endpoint, the experience is complete. But for many women, intimacy isn't linear, it's layered, it's emotional. It builds gradually, and when rushed or overlooked, it can feel like something important was missed. And over time, that feeling becomes familiar, even expected. She may stop asking, she may stop initiating. Not because the desire is gone, but because it doesn't feel worth the emotional risk of being unmet again. That's not how intimacy should feel for anyone. Every person deserves to feel desired, considered, and satisfied. Not just physically, but emotionally too. And that means shifting the mindset from, did it work, to did we connect? That's a very different question. It's not just about whether something happened, it's about whether both people felt valued, cared for, and seen in the process. Positions play a huge role in this dynamic. Some positions are incredibly focused on one person's stimulation, while others create a stronger sense of mutual involvement. But if a partner is never asking what she wants, never switching things up or checking in, then it becomes less about shared pleasure and more about performance on repeat. And that disconnect builds slowly, until one day it's undeniable. The beauty is, it doesn't take grand gestures to shift this. It just takes awareness. Small adjustments, asking more questions, slowing down, exploring new positions that are focused on her body. These choices show that her pleasure matters, that her experience is equal in priority. And when that balance is restored, the energy changes. She becomes more open, more confident, more invested, and so does he. Because the most powerful intimacy happens when both people feel like they're giving and receiving fully, without pressure, without ego, and without keeping score. Trying new things in the bedroom is about so much more than just novelty. It's about trust, real, deep, emotional trust that says, I feel safe with you, I feel open with you, and I want to explore this with you. It's easy to overlook how powerful that dynamic is. When two people step outside of routine and into curiosity, they're doing more than just changing up positions. They're reinforcing the message that their relationship is a space for growth, not stagnation. But here's the thing. Trying something new requires vulnerability. It asks both people to let go of control, to risk a little awkwardness, to be seen in a different light. And that can feel uncomfortable. It's not uncommon for couples to hit a plateau, where the same 3 or 4 positions are on rotation, not because they're the only ones that work, but because they've become the safest options. They're predictable, they don't require negotiation or experiment. And while there's nothing wrong with consistency, it can slowly become the very thing that dulls the connection. What makes a relationship feel alive isn't perfection, it's presence. It's when both people are genuinely engaged, paying attention, and open to discovering more about each other. That sense of discovery doesn't fade with time. It fades with avoidance. And a lot of the positions women wish were being explored aren't necessarily wild or acrobatic. They're positions that require attention, participation, and sometimes a shift in who's leading. When a man takes initiative to try something new, especially something she's hinted at or expressed interest in, it sends a powerful message. I care about your pleasure. I care about your curiosity. I want to learn you, not just assume I already have. This kind of exploration builds emotional intimacy just as much as physical satisfaction. It brings laughter, surprise, and a sense of playfulness that many couples lose over time. It also opens the door for her to feel more confident in expressing what she really wants. Because when new experiences are welcomed, not judged, it makes room for even deeper conversations and bolder desires to emerge. And here's the part most people miss. You don't need to master a new position to make it meaningful. It's not about performing. It's about showing up with willingness, even if it's clumsy or imperfect. What matters is that you're showing your partner that she's worth the effort, that her pleasure is not just a bonus, but a priority. When that kind of trust is present, intimacy becomes a space of freedom, not pressure. And in that space, couples don't just connect, they evolve, they grow closer, they laugh more, and they unlock parts of each other that routine could never reach. Because every time you try something new together, you're not just experimenting, you're saying, I choose you again and again. In intimacy, that skill is often more powerful than technique, because no matter how experienced someone is, or how confident they feel in their own abilities, if they're not tuned in to what their partner needs or wants, they're missing the entire point. Physical connection isn't just about movement, it's about awareness, responsiveness, and a willingness to adapt. That's what builds trust, and trust is what unlocks deeper pleasure. One of the most misunderstood parts of intimacy is feedback. For a lot of men, hearing a suggestion or a request in the bedroom can feel like criticism. It can hit the ego in a way that says, you're not doing enough, or you're doing it wrong. But that's not what it is. When a woman shares what she needs, she's not complaining, she's inviting her partner to know her more deeply. That's a gift. And the men who recognize that, the ones who lean in instead of pulling back, they become exceptional partners. Because let's be honest, no one can read minds, and every person is different. What worked for someone else, or even what worked a few months ago, might not be what her body or her heart is asking for now. That's why listening with curiosity instead of defensiveness is so important. It's how couples stay connected, not just physically, but emotionally. When a man is open to learning, refining, and exploring based on her responses, it shows maturity and care. It says, I'm here with you, not just for you. And here's the reality, no woman wants a perfect partner. She wants a present one. Someone who asks questions, pays attention, and makes her feel safe enough to be honest. It's not about getting everything right the first time, it's about creating a space where she can speak up, where she knows her words won't be shut down, or that kind of emotional safety changes everything. It turns performance into connection, and routine into something alive and evolving. It also makes her want to give more. When a woman feels truly heard, she becomes more confident, more expressive, and more open to trying new things herself. It becomes a cycle. The more he listens, the more she shares, the more she shares, the more fulfilling the experience becomes for both of them. And suddenly, those quiet frustrations that build over time, they disappear. Because both people are showing up, not just with their bodies, but with their hearts. So if you really want to know what your partner is craving, don't guess, don't assume, ask, listen, adjust, and don't take her feedback as a failure. Take it as a chance to grow even closer. Because listening well isn't just a skill in intimacy, it's an act of love. Empowered intimacy doesn't begin in the bedroom, it starts in the mind. It begins with the belief that pleasure is not something to fear, judge, or avoid, but something to explore, nurture, and celebrate. And for that to happen, both partners need to bring open-mindedness into their connection. Without it, intimacy becomes mechanical, predictable, sometimes even disconnected. But when two people approach each other with curiosity instead of assumption, everything changes. There's often a quiet pressure, especially in long-term relationships, to stick with what works and avoid rocking the boat. New positions, new experiences, even new conversations can feel risky, especially if the dynamic has been stable for a long time. But stability isn't the same as fulfillment. And what we're talking about isn't about trying something for shock value or novelty, it's about creating space for growth. Because just like we evolve as individuals, our desires evolve too. The mistake so many couples make is assuming that what was enough then is still enough now. When you allow open-mindedness into your relationship, you're not just giving permission for your partner to express themselves, you're inviting them. You're saying, this is a safe space. You can bring your full self here. That creates an energy where both people feel freer, more alive, and more connected. Suddenly, positions that once felt intimidating or unfamiliar become opportunities for shared discovery. And even if something doesn't go exactly as planned, it becomes a memory, something you tried together. That shared vulnerability builds emotional intimacy in ways most people underestimate. It's also important to recognize that being open-minded doesn't mean saying yes to everything. It means being willing to consider, to discuss, and to approach new ideas without judgment. Sometimes it means saying, "I'm not sure, but let's talk about it," or "let's try and see how it feels." That kind of openness builds bridges where walls used to be. It turns difficult conversations into moments of connection, and most importantly, it empowers both partners to stop hiding and start showing up fully. When a woman feels like she can be completely herself, not just emotionally, but physically, it unlocks a deeper level of intimacy. Her confidence grows, her body relaxes, her desires surface. But that only happens when the environment is open enough to welcome it. And that environment is built by choice, daily, intentional choice, to be present, curious, and accepting. The couples who keep their intimacy alive are rarely the ones with the most experience or the most tricks. They're the ones who keep learning each other, who never stop being students of their partner's body and soul, who understand that good intimacy isn't a destination, it's a practice. Because when both people are open, honest, and willing to evolve together, intimacy stops being just physical and becomes transformation.